What if the only person who could save the world was the one born to destroy it? She was sold like a sacrifice. He was cursed to guard the night forever. But when their souls collided, even the veil between worlds began to break. This isn't just a love story. It's a war between light and darkness, and only one heart will survive it. The torches burned low in the hall of House Draenor, their light weak against the cold marble that seemed to drink every flicker. It should have been a night of celebration, the betrothal of Ira's elder sister to a lord whose lands glittered with gold and glory. Yet, for Ira, seated at the far end of the table beside the servants, it was a night that tasted of ash. No one spoke to her. They hadn't in years. The laughter of her kin echoed like knives against her ribs. Her mother's silken gown shimmered each time she turned to favor her eldest with a smile. Her father, Lord Draenor, raised his cup again and again, toasting alliances that would bring fortune and power. Not once did his eyes stray toward the youngest daughter, the one they whispered was cursed. Iris stared into her untouched goblet. Her reflection rippled back, distorted by the crimson wine. Pale face, wild hair, eyes too bright, too strange. They said she was born under a red moon, that death followed her shadow. When she was a child, her nurse had died in her sleep. When she turned 12, her brother's hound had gone mad at the sight of her and torn its own throat open. Since then, they had called her Harbinger. And, tonight, they meant to be rid of her. When the final toast was raised, Lord Draenor rose to his feet, the hall silencing beneath his voice. "Tonight, we honor not only a union," he said, his words smooth and poisonous, "but an end to a curse that has long plagued this house." Ira's stomach twisted. She didn't breathe. Her father's gaze found her, cold, hard, and final. "The Shadow Lord of Vareth has demanded tribute, a daughter of my blood to seal our peace." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, sharp as the wind. Everyone knew the legends. Vareth, the fortress beyond the veil, where the night itself obeyed its master. No mortal who entered ever returned. Her father continued, "And since one of my daughters is already promised, I offer the other." His hand cut through the air, cruel as a blade. "Ira." Laughter burst like thunder around her. The cursed child. The unwanted one. Her sister smirked, eyes gleaming with delight. "How fitting," someone whispered. "Darkness for darkness." The great doors groaned open. A wind swept through, snuffing out half the torches. Shadows coiled into the hall like smoke. And from the night beyond, a figure stepped forward. He was tall, inhumanly so, cloaked in black that seemed to devour light. His hair, dark as midnight, his eyes, a strange, shifting silver that caught the flicker of flame. When he spoke, the air trembled. "Which is she?" His voice was deep, calm, and wrong, like thunder beneath the ocean. Her father gestured sharply. "There, the cursed one." The Shadow Lord's gaze cut through the hall until it met hers. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. The laughter died. Even the flames seemed to bow. Ira could not move. She should have been afraid. She should have screamed. Instead, when he extended a gloved hand, she felt something stranger, a pull, ancient and impossible, thrumming through her blood. "Come," he said quietly. "The night waits." Her father barked a command. "Take her, and be gone from my sight." But the Shadow Lord didn't take her. He waited. And for the first time in her life, Ira stood without being ordered. The weight of every sneer and whisper pressed behind her, yet she lifted her chin. Slowly, she crossed the floor, her footsteps echoing in the silence. When she placed her hand in his, a shiver ran through her, cold, yes, but also alive. The doors closed behind them with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. Ira didn't look back. The gates of House Draenor slammed shut behind them, the echo reverberating through Ira's bones. For a breath, she thought her knees might buckle, but the Shadow Lord's hand, cold, unyielding, kept her upright. The night pressed close, thick and silent, as if the world itself held its breath. The courtyard was empty save for a single steed, a monstrous creature of black hide and burning eyes, its breath curling in the air like smoke. When the Shadow Lord approached, the beast bowed its massive head, snorting softly as if recognizing its master. Ira had never seen such a creature. Its hooves were shod in silver, its mane streaked with faint veins of shadow that seemed to move on their own. She took a half-step back, her fingers trembling. She began, her voice small against the vastness of the night. He turned his head slightly, and she fell silent. You fear it, he said, not as a question but as a statement. Good. Fear keeps mortals alive. Her breath hitched. And if fear fails? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, an expression so fleeting she might have imagined it. Then you have me. He mounted the beast in one fluid motion, cloak sweeping around him like living smoke. When he extended his hand toward her, she hesitated. Her father's words clawed at her thoughts. Useless, cursed, unworthy. She had never ridden, not properly. I can't, she whispered. You can, he replied, his tone a quiet command that stirred something in her chest, something that sounded like defiance. Or must I carry you myself? The challenge stung more than the cold. She set her jaw, stepped forward, and placed her hand in his. With terrifying ease, he pulled her upward and settled her before him. His arms slid around her waist to steady her, the chill of his armor seeping through the thin fabric of her dress. She stiffened at the contact, but his hold was not cruel. It was steady, anchoring. Hold on, he murmured. Then the beast lunged into motion. The wind roared past her, tearing at her hair. The fortress, the lights, the life she had known, all blurred into darkness behind them. The world became a streak of shadow and moonlight. Her pulse thundered in her ears, her heart pounding with fear and exhilaration. Hours passed, or minutes. She couldn't tell. The path wound upward through forests that grew twisted and ancient, the trees leaning in as if to listen. Strange lights flickered between them, like ghostly eyes. Ira risked a glance at the Shadow Lord. He rode as though born of the night, his silver gaze fixed ahead, unbothered by the biting wind. Why me? She finally asked, her voice breaking through the silence. He didn't answer at first. Only the rhythmic beat of the horses' hooves filled the air. Then, quietly, because they wanted to discard you. That's not an answer. No, he said, and there was an edge of amusement now. But it is the truth. She turned slightly to face him. Then why take me? He leaned closer, his breath cold against her ear. Because what they call curse, I call power. Ira froze. The words crawled under her skin. Power. She had never been associated with that word before. Before she could speak, the air shifted. A low hum filled her ears, unnatural, pulsing with unseen energy. Ahead, the forest opened into a vast chasm. On the far side rose the fortress of Vareth. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its towers clawed at the sky, built from black stone that shimmered faintly as if alive. A bridge of shadow arched across the gorge, suspended by nothing. The beast slowed as they approached. Do not look down, Kale murmured. I wasn't planning to, she replied, her voice shaking despite her attempt at defiance. He guided the horse onto the bridge. The surface rippled under their weight like ink, yet held firm. Below, endless darkness churned, whispering in voices she couldn't understand. What is that? She asked, clutching his arm. The veil, he said. The divide between worlds. Cross it once, and you are bound to the night. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Bound. He inclined his head slightly. You cannot return to the mortal realm. The air grew heavier with each step. By the time they reached the other side, her skin prickled with cold fire. The gates of Vareth opened without a sound, welcoming their arrival. The horse stopped in the courtyard. Kale dismounted first, then extended his hand to her again. She hesitated, glancing at the towers that loomed above. Am I your prisoner? She asked. He looked down at her, expression unreadable. If you were, he said softly, would I ask instead of command? Ira placed her hand in his once more. As his fingers closed around hers, the world beyond the veil seemed to vanish, leaving only the echo of his words and the quiet promise of a fate she couldn't yet name. The first thing Ira noticed as she crossed the threshold of Vareth was the silence. Not the stillness of emptiness, but a deep, resonant hush, like the entire fortress was listening. The doors sealed behind them with a whisper instead of a slam, the sound rippling through the hall like a sigh. The air inside was cool, perfumed faintly with cedar, steel, and something older, something that made her skin prickle. Shadows flickered across the high walls, not cast by any torch or flame, but moving of their own accord. The floor beneath her feet gleamed like obsidian glass, reflecting her pale face back at her in perfect clarity. "This way," the Shadow Lord said, his voice low and measured. Ira followed, each step echoing faintly, the sound devoured before it could rise too high. He walked with inhuman grace, every movement silent, controlled. When he spoke again, it startled her. "You are trembling." She hadn't realized it. "It's cold," she lied. "It isn't," he said. And he was right. The air was neither cold nor warm. It was simply still, unnervingly so. She wrapped her arms around herself anyway. They ascended a sweeping staircase, its railings carved from black stone that shimmered faintly, like starlight trapped beneath glass. Portraits lined the walls, faces pale and proud, their eyes following her as she passed. "Your family?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "In a sense," he replied. "The ones who came before me. Some were kings. Others were monsters. Most were both." She shivered, unsure how to respond. At the top of the staircase, a vast corridor opened before them, lined with heavy doors. He stopped at one carved with symbols that pulsed faintly, as if alive. When he pushed it open, Ira's breath caught. The chamber beyond was beautiful. Soft light poured from sconces of crystal. A fire burned in the hearth, casting warmth across the room. The bed was enormous, draped in furs and deep blue velvet. The walls were lined with tapestries depicting moons, storms, and rivers of shadow. It was more than she had ever been given in her life. Her voice came out small. "This is for me? For now." She turned toward him, uncertain. "For now." His gaze flickered over her, unreadable. "Until you decide what you are." "I don't understand." "You will." He turned to leave, but she stepped forward. "Wait," she said. You haven't told me your name." He stopped at the threshold, his back to her. "Kale." The name rolled through the air, like thunder half-remembered. "And mine?" she asked quietly. "Do you know it?" He turned then, his eyes catching the firelight. "Ira of House Draenor," he said softly, as if testing how the syllables felt on his tongue. "They said you were cursed." Her stomach clenched. They were right. "No," he said, crossing the room until he stood close enough that she could feel the weight of his presence. "They were afraid." The air between them thrummed. His voice dropped lower, gentler but no less commanding. "Do not call yourself cursed again in my presence." Something in her chest loosened. No one had ever corrected her when she insulted herself. No one had ever cared to. Before she could find her voice, Kale turned toward the door again. "Rest. There is food on the table, should you wish it. Tomorrow, I will show you what it means to live in my realm." And with that, he was gone. Ira stood in the center of the chamber, dazed. The door closed with a whisper, sealing her inside. For a long time, she didn't move. Her reflection shimmered in the polished glass of the window, small, uncertain, out of place. And yet, something inside her stirred. Not fear. Not exactly. Curiosity. She turned toward the table where a meal waited, warm bread, dark fruit, roasted meat glistening with honey. It looked untouched, perfect. Her stomach twisted painfully at the scent. She hadn't eaten since dawn. Still, she hesitated. Was it a trick? A test? As if in answer, the shadows at the edge of the room shifted, forming briefly into a human shape before dissolving again. Ira stiffened, heart pounding. "Do not fear," came a soft voice from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was Kale's, though distant now. Vareth watches over its own. Its own. Ira exhaled shakily, then sank into the chair. The food was warm, real. The taste, rich and sharp, made her throat tighten with sudden tears. She hadn't realized how starved she'd been, not just for food, but for something else. For care. That night, she dreamed of the bridge again, the darkness beneath it, the whispering voices. But this time, when she turned toward the figure beside her, Kale's eyes glowed brighter, their silver light casting away every shadow that dared approach. When she woke, the fire was still burning. And for the first time in years, she wasn't cold. Morning in Vareth did not come with sunlight. The fortress existed in a world where dawn never broke, only a pale, silvery glow that filtered through unseen cracks in the clouds. When Ira awoke, it was to that light seeping gently across the firs, soft but unreal. For a moment she thought she'd dreamed it all. The hall, the Shadow Lord, the ride across the veil, but when she stretched out her hand, she felt the velvet beneath her fingers and the faint hum of magic in the air. Her chest tightened. This was no dream. A knock came, soft, measured. Ira sat up sharply. "Who is it?" The door opened just enough to admit a woman. She was tall and slender, her skin pale as polished marble, her eyes faintly aglow with violet light. A dark robe draped her figure, embroidered with silver threads that shimmered like starlight. "Forgive the intrusion," she said, bowing slightly. "I am Lyra, steward of Vareth. My lord has instructed me to see to your needs." Ira blinked. Her needs. No one had ever spoken those words to her before. Lyra set down a tray of folded garments and a steaming cup of something fragrant. "He said you might prefer these to last night's dress." Ira touched the fabric, midnight blue, soft as river mist, tailored perfectly to her size. Her throat closed. He thought of that. Lyra's mouth curved faintly. "Lord Kale forgets nothing." There was something in her tone, admiration, perhaps even awe, but also the faintest shadow of warning. Ira rose, her bare feet pressing against the cold floor. "You're not afraid of him?" she asked carefully. Lyra glanced toward the hearth before replying. "Fear is complicated in Vareth. It keeps us sharp. It keeps us loyal." That did not sound like comfort. When Lyra left, Ira changed into the gown. It fit her as though it had been waiting for her all along. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and froze. The fabric draped over her curves with quiet dignity, the color deepening the strange light in her eyes. For once, she didn't look like an omen of ruin. She looked human. Whole. A sound drew her attention to the door. A low, rhythmic thud. Curiosity tugged stronger than caution. She stepped out into the corridor. The hall stretched endlessly, lined with high-arched windows that showed nothing but drifting mist beyond. Vampiric attendants glided past, tall, pale, their expressions calm and unreadable. Some glanced at her, some bowed, but none sneered or whispered. Ira's heart pounded. She had spent her entire life shrinking from stares. Now she met them head-on. At the far end of the corridor, the door to a vast chamber stood ajar. From within came the echo of steel meeting steel. She hesitated, then entered. The training hall was immense, its floor polished smooth as onyx. In its center stood Kale. He moved like liquid shadow, his blade an arc of silver light that sang through the air as it met another's. His opponent, a tall vampire with bronze hair and eyes like molten gold, struck fast, but Kale was faster. He sidestepped with effortless grace and disarmed the man in a single motion. Ira caught her breath. There was no wasted movement, no hesitation. Power clung to him like a second skin. When he turned, his gaze found her instantly. "You're awake," he said, voice unreadable. "Good." The golden-eyed vampire bowed and withdrew. Kale sheathed his blade. "You should not wander alone," he said as he approached. "I wasn't wandering," she said, though her voice trembled. "I heard the sound, and curiosity led you here." He stopped close enough that she could feel the energy radiating off him, cold yet magnetic. Tell me, Ira, does curiosity often outweigh your fear? She met his gaze, forcing steadiness into her tone. Only when I forget to be afraid. A ghost of approval flickered in his expression. Then forget more often. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the expanse of the training floor.
Come.
She blinked. Me? You wish to survive here? Yes, she breathed. Then you will learn how. He drew a circle in the air with one gloved hand, and the shadows obeyed. They rose from the ground, forming a faint barrier around them, shimmering like smoke caught in moonlight. Within Verith, strength is not granted, it is earned, he said. And yours, Ira, has long been neglected. We will change that. He guided her stance, his hands adjusting her posture with careful precision. His touch was cool, but his movements were deliberate, never invasive. Every correction felt like a statement. You are not fragile. You are capable. When she faltered, he said only, again. They practiced until her arms ached and sweat dampened her neck. She stumbled once, twice, but each time his hand steadied her. Never mocking, never impatient. By the time he dismissed her, her body trembled from exhaustion, but her pulse thrummed with something she hadn't felt in years, pride. As she turned to leave, Kale's voice followed her, quiet but resonant. Tomorrow, I will show you what the shadows are for. Do not fear them. She paused at the door. And if I do? His silver eyes caught the faint light, sharp and knowing. Then learn to make them fear you. Ira carried those words with her long after she left the hall. That night, as she lay awake in her chamber, she thought of the fortress that breathed like a living thing around her, of the man who commanded it, and of the strength she could almost feel stirring beneath her skin. For the first time, the word cursed did not sound like a chain. It sounded like a challenge. The next evening came not with sunrise, but with a deepening shimmer that passed for twilight in Verith. In the Shadow Lord's realm, time bled together, no dawn, no dusk, only an endless stretch of silver darkness that hummed like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Ira woke to the low toll of a distant bell. It wasn't loud, but she felt it resonate in her ribs. A summons. When she stepped from her chamber, she found Lyra already waiting, hands clasped neatly before her. The Lord requests your presence in the Hall of Echoes, the steward said, her tone neither warm nor cold, only reverent. Ira followed. The corridors seemed longer today. The air itself was thicker, denser, alive with whispering murmurs that faded when she tried to listen too closely. Every torch they passed flared faintly, as if acknowledging her. When they reached the end of the hall, vast doors of black glass loomed before them. Lyra bowed her head and retreated without another word. Ira was alone. She hesitated, then pushed the doors open. The Hall of Echoes was unlike any space she had seen before. Its ceiling disappeared into mist, its walls carved with runes that glowed faintly whenever she moved. At its center stood Kale, cloaked in shadow, a faint circle of light cast around him by unseen forces. You came, he said without turning. You summoned me, she replied, and hated that her voice shook. He faced her then. And you obeyed. Good. His eyes caught the light, silver, liquid, alive. Do you know what binds this fortress together? The shadows, she said quietly. He inclined his head. Not quite. The will behind them. He extended his hand, and the darkness at his feet stirred like water in a deep pool. It flowed upward, forming shapes, blades, hands, faces, then dispersed into mist. They are not mindless, he said. They remember. They serve the one who commands them. Ira's heart beat faster. And you command them? I am them, he said simply. Verith answers to me as blood answers to the heart. The shadows pulsed once in agreement. Then why show me this? She asked, uneasy. Because they already know you. Her breath caught. The air seemed to thicken, and in the space between them, the shadows coiled. They stretched toward her like vines, brushing her hands with feather-light curiosity. Cold seeped into her skin, yet beneath it, Something warm stirred, familiar, ancient. "I don't," she whispered. "I don't understand." Kale's voice softened, though it still carried that strange weight that made every word feel eternal. "The night remembers its own, Ira. Even before you crossed the veil, it recognized you." "Recognized me? As what?" He stepped closer, and the air between them shivered. "As one of its lost children." Her mind reeled. "That's not possible. I'm human." His gaze didn't waver. "Were you ever?" For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Kale extended his hand again. "Take it." Ira hesitated. Every instinct screamed, not to. But curiosity, always her undoing, won. The moment her fingers brushed his, a rush of cold fire surged through her veins. The world dimmed. The runes on the walls flared, and she saw flashes. Images that weren't her own. A woman crowned in shadow standing before an army of night. A crimson moon hanging over a burning field. A child, her face, crying in the arms of that same woman before being carried through a gate of silver light. Iris staggered back, breath tearing from her chest. "What was that?" "Truth," Kale said quietly. "Your curse is not misfortune. It is inheritance." She stared at him, wide-eyed. "You mean to say I'm what? A creature like you?" "No," he said, a faint smile ghosting his lips. "Something rarer. You are descended from those who once ruled between the veils, half mortal, half born of shadow. Your family feared what they could not understand, so they named it a curse." Her head spun. "Then why bring me here? What do you want from me?" Kale's expression softened, not kind, but reverent. "To teach you to control it, or it will destroy you." The shadows around them sank back to the floor. For a long moment, only the sound of her uneven breathing filled the hall. Ira pressed her palm to her chest, where her heart still raced. "And if I don't want it?" He regarded her quietly. "You already have it. Denying the storm doesn't stop the thunder." She met his gaze. "And if I fail?" "Then the darkness will take you," he said. "And I will have to stop you myself." The words weren't a threat. They were a promise, sorrowful, inevitable. Ira swallowed hard, then straightened. "Then teach me." A slow smile curved his lips, and something ancient flickered in his eyes. "Good," he murmured. "Let the night begin." He raised his hand again, and the shadows obeyed, forming a circle around her once more. This time, when the cold touched her skin, she didn't flinch. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the darkness in. It whispered her name. Not cursed, not harbinger, just Ira. And for the first time, she answered back. The following nights blurred together in a strange rhythm, training, learning, enduring. Kale pushed her until her muscles trembled, until her breath came in ragged bursts, until she wanted to curse his name. Yet, somehow, she began to crave those moments when his calm voice cut through the chaos of her own thoughts, anchoring her. Each lesson was harder than the last. At first, the shadows resisted her touch, writhing like wild creatures. They obeyed Kale instantly, bending to his will, as if they were part of his very blood. But when Ira reached for them, they bit. The air burned cold against her skin, leaving faint, silvery marks that faded by morning. "Pain is not rejection," Kale told her one evening as they stood in the courtyard beneath a sky that never changed. "It is recognition. They test you because they remember what you are." Ira exhaled sharply, sweat clinging to her brow. "You keep saying that, what I am. But I don't feel like anything except broken." Kale's expression softened in a way that was rare for him. "Broken things are simply waiting to be reforged." He moved closer, his cloak stirring the faint mist curling over the stones. His hand came up, not to command, but to guide. "Close your eyes." She hesitated, then obeyed. "Listen," he said quietly. "Do not try to control them. The shadows are older than command. They follow truth, not force." Iris steadied her breathing. She focused on the dark beneath her eyelids, on the hum that always seemed to thread through the air in Vareth. Slowly, the whispering began again, faint, echoing, not quite words but not meaningless either. "What are they saying?" she whispered. Kale's voice came from beside her. "They are asking who you serve." Her eyes flew open. "Serve? I don't." He cut her off gently. "Tell them." Her pulse quickened. The air thickened around her.
I servono one."
The shadows recoiled, restless, like a tide pulling away from the shore. Kale's jaw tightened, but he didn't interfere. Again. This time her voice steadied. "I serve myself." A deep vibration rolled through the courtyard. The shadows rose, swirling around her in tendrils of black mist that brushed her skin without burning. They moved like living things, no longer attacking, but circling, curious, watchful. Kale's eyes gleamed faintly, approval flickering across his face. "Better." Ira opened her eyes fully. The shadows responded to her now, faint but real, bending at her will. For a moment, a thrill rushed through her veins. Heady, dangerous, intoxicating. Then the power faltered, slipping away like smoke. She gasped, falling to her knees. Kale was there instantly, steadying her before she hit the ground.
"Easy."
"It's like they drain me," she breathed.
"They do," he said.
"Because they remember hunger. Power demands a price. The question is whether you're willing to pay it." She looked up at him, and for a heartbeat, she swore she saw something in his expression that wasn't mastery or indifference, but worry. He helped her to her feet. His gloved fingers brushed the inside of her wrist, where faint veins of silver light pulsed under the skin. "It's already in you," he murmured, almost to himself. "It always was." Their eyes met. The silence stretched, heavy and electric. "Why do you care so much?" Ira asked softly. "You could have taken any offering my father sent. Why me?" Kale's hand dropped away slowly. "Because I knew your name before he spoke it." Ira froze. "That's not possible." He turned away, the edge of his cloak brushing the stones. "There are few things left in this world that are possible. You are one of them." The cryptic answer only raised more questions, but she knew better than to press him. Kale did not speak in half-truths out of malice. He spoke like someone who had lived too long to remember how to explain everything to mortals. That night, sleep did not come easily. When it did, it brought fire. She dreamed of a battlefield soaked in silver mist. She stood at its center, wielding light that bled from her hands like liquid metal. Kale was there, a shadow beside her, but his eyes glowed red, not silver, and his voice was the roar of an oncoming storm. "You cannot control it," the dream Kale said, his tone both warning and plea. "It will destroy you." Ira woke with a cry. The fire in the hearth flared violently as she sat upright, breath ragged. For a moment, she thought she saw her own shadow move across the wall, separate from her body, watching. The door opened. Kale stood there, his presence filling the room like a living storm. "You called the shadows in your sleep," he said. "I didn't mean to." "Meaning doesn't matter," he said, stepping closer. "Intent does." She stared up at him, her heart hammering. "Then what do I do?" He looked down at her, silver eyes catching the flicker of the fire. "You learn not to fear yourself." For a long time neither moved. The air between them pulsed with an energy that felt neither safe nor dangerous, something stranger, deeper. Finally, Kale spoke again, softer this time. "Tomorrow, you will come with me beyond the walls. The night outside Verith will test you. It will show you who you really are." Ira swallowed, but nodded. "And if I fail?" Kale's hand brushed her cheek, his fingers cold but steady. "Then the shadows will claim you," he said, "and I will bring you back." There was no promise in his tone, only certainty. And for the first time, Ira wasn't sure which fate frightened her more. The gates of Verith opened without a sound, parting like the jaws of some enormous creature. Beyond them stretched a wilderness that seemed untouched by mortal hands, forests of silver ash, rivers of black glass, and mountains veiled in constant mist. The air itself shimmered faintly, thick with an energy that tasted of iron and memory. Ira followed Kale into the endless dark. He wore no armor, only a cloak of shadow that moved as if alive. Beside him, she felt both small and protected, though she didn't understand why. "The land beyond the walls is not like the world you knew," Kale said as they walked. "Here, everything is bound by will. The earth, the wind, the beasts, they remember who commands them. The unworthy are devoured." She glanced at him sharply. Devoured? His lips curved faintly, figuratively.
Usually.
That's not reassuring. Good. It shouldn't be. They passed through a grove where the trees seemed to lean toward Kale as he passed, their branches whispering in languages older than time. Ira tried not to stare, but the sound made her skin crawl. "What are they saying?" she asked. "That the bloodline has returned," he said. Her steps faltered. "You mean me?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. They walked until the ground sloped downward into a valley drowned in mist. In its center lay a pool so dark it reflected no light at all. Kale stopped at its edge. "This is where your trial begins," he said. "My trial. To wield the shadow, you must face what it fears most." Ira's brow furrowed. "Shadows can fear?" His gaze lingered on her, unreadable. They remember what birthed them. The first light. The fire that nearly destroyed them. He motioned toward the pool. "Step inside." She recoiled. "That looks like oblivion?" He nodded once. "Precisely." Her heart hammered. "And what if I drown?" "Then you were never meant to rise." The words should have frightened her, but instead they steadied her. Ira drew a shaky breath, removed her cloak, and stepped forward. The surface of the pool rippled like liquid smoke beneath her feet. When the cold reached her knees, she gasped. It wasn't water. It was memory. Images burst through her mind. Her father's sneer, her sister's laughter, the servants' whispers, cursed. Harbinger.
Mistake.
Her pulse spiked. The liquid reached her chest, dragging at her like invisible hands. She tried to breathe, but the darkness pressed in from all sides, thick and suffocating. Somewhere above her, Kale's voice echoed faintly. "Do not fight it. Face it." She wanted to scream. Instead, she shut her eyes. The world vanished. She stood again, but not in the valley. This place was colder, emptier. Before her stretched a reflection of herself, but twisted. Her other self's eyes glowed white, her smile sharp as glass. "You don't belong here," the reflection hissed. "You never did." Ira staggered back. "You're not real. I am every truth you buried." The double stepped closer, shadows dripping from its fingers. "You think he sees you as anything more than a tool? A curiosity." Ira flinched. The reflection's words cut deep because they echoed the doubt she refused to name. "He doesn't love," the reflection whispered. "He commands. And when you fail, he'll cast you aside, like they did."
No.
"Say it." "I said no." Ira shouted, the sound cracking through the void like thunder. Light, cold and searing, burst from her palms. The reflection screamed, splintering into 1,000 shards that dissolved into mist. The darkness collapsed inward, folding around her like silk. When she opened her eyes again, she was back in the valley, on her knees in the pool. Kale stood at the edge, his expression unreadable, but there was something fierce in his gaze. "You didn't drown," he said quietly. Ira's chest heaved. "You knew that would happen." "I hoped," he corrected. She glared at him. "You could have warned me." He knelt beside her, his presence a cool contrast to the heat still thrumming through her veins. "And robbed you of the moment you chose to live?"
No.
Her anger faltered, replaced by confusion and a strange sense of pride. "I saw something in there," she said, voice low. "Something wrong." "You saw yourself," Kale said. "The part that still believes you are nothing. Until you master that, the shadows will never truly obey you." Ira met his gaze, and something unspoken passed between them. A quiet recognition, a thread tightening between darkness and light. He stood, extending a hand to her.
Come.
"The night stirs, and Vareth will not remain quiet forever." She took his hand. The pool stilled, reflecting their joined silhouettes. For the first time, Ira noticed how the shadows around Kale no longer recoiled from her. They bowed. As they walked back toward the fortress, Kale spoke again, his tone softer now. "You are stronger than they were ever meant to allow you to be." Ira glanced up at him, a small, incredulous smile forming. "Then they should have killed me when they had the chance." Kale's lips curved. "They couldn't. The night doesn't let go of what it claims." A chill ran through her, not of fear, but recognition. Because somewhere deep in her bones, she knew he was right. Vareth had changed. Or perhaps Ira thought she had. The fortress no longer felt like a tomb of endless stone. It breathed now, whispered, pulsed. The shadows no longer recoiled from her presence. They followed, silent and reverent. Servants bowed their heads as she passed, and for the first time, she noticed it was not fear alone that moved them. It was recognition. But not all within the walls welcomed her awakening. Rumors spread like frost through the corridors. Whispers of the mortal witch who walked beside the Shadow Lord. Of Kale's favor toward the outsider. Of how the shadows themselves bent to her will. Ira ignored them at first. Until the day one of the whispers dared to take form. It happened in the training yard. The scent of steel and cold air filled the space. Kale had sent her there to train alone, saying only that the shadows must learn her command, not his. She practiced the way he'd taught her, breathing evenly, letting her focus sink into the pulse of the stone beneath her. The shadows came when called now, curling around her arms like living ribbons. She guided them into a spear of black flame, then dismissed it. Each attempt left her stronger, until a slow, mocking clap broke the silence. Well, came a voice behind her. "The Shadow Lord's pet does have teeth." Ira turned sharply. Standing a few paces away was a woman she hadn't seen before, or perhaps hadn't noticed. Tall, impossibly graceful, with eyes that glowed crimson instead of silver. Her lips curved in a predatory smile. "You're not one of the servants," Ira said cautiously. The woman tilted her head.
No.
"I am Leora, once captain of Vareth's guard, and long before you came, I was his right hand." Ira felt her pulse quicken. "Then why are you not still?" Leora's smile sharpened. "Because you exist." The shadows shifted uneasily around them, sensing the growing tension. "I don't want his throne," Ira said. "No," Leora murmured, circling her like a vulture. "You only want him." Ira's breath caught. "That's not." "Spare me the lie," Leora snapped, her voice a whip. "I've seen the way he looks at you. Do you even know what you've done, little mortal? You've made the Eternal hesitate." Before Ira could speak, Leora moved. One moment she stood across the circle. The next, she was behind her, cold fingers gripping her wrist. Pain lanced through Ira's arm as the shadows recoiled violently, hissing like struck serpents. Leora's strength was inhuman. "Do you think he'll protect you forever?" Leora whispered against her ear. "He was forged from night and blood. He cannot love. And when you learn that, it will break you." Ira gasped, forcing her power forward. The shadows surged to her defense, slamming into Leora like a tidal wave. The captain staggered back, hissing as the darkness burned her pale skin. For a moment, Ira's fury roared louder than fear. "You don't get to decide who I am to him." Leora's eyes blazed red. "Then prove it." The courtyard erupted into chaos. Shadows clashed against crimson light as they struck and countered, two forces colliding with raw, primal energy. The air sizzled with magic. Ira moved instinctively, Kale's lessons whispering through her mind. "Don't force, guide." Leora lunged, a dagger of light forming in her palm. Ira twisted aside and thrust her hand forward. The shadows responded, weaving into a blade of pure night that met Leora's strike midair. The impact sent both reeling. Ira fell to one knee, breath ragged, her vision blurring. Leora straightened, blood dripping from a cut across her cheek. The sight of it enraged her. "You think this means you belong here? You're still human. Still weak." Ira's hand trembled, but she didn't back down. Then maybe weakness has its own strength. Leora's expression faltered just long enough for a ripple of darkness to surge from Ira's fingertips, wrapping around her like chains. In an instant, the former captain was bound, her own shadow betraying her. Enough. Cale's voice cut through the air like a blade. He appeared at the edge of the courtyard, his presence silencing the storm. Every torch dimmed. Every whisper ceased. Ira turned, her heart thundering. She attacked me. I can see that, Cale said. His gaze flicked to Leora, whose eyes now smoldered with barely contained hatred. You forget yourself, he told her coldly. She forgets you, Leora hissed. You've let her poison your judgment. You think the night will obey you if she lives. Cale's expression didn't change. It already does. The words hit like thunder. Shadows coiled around Leora, not at Ira's command, but his. They lifted her from the ground, her scream echoing once before she vanished into mist. Silence. Ira stared at him. You didn't have to. She drew blood within my walls, he said quietly. You are under my protection. I didn't ask for it, she snapped, anger and fear twisting inside her. I can fight for myself. Cale stepped closer, his tone low but sharp. You misunderstand. Protection is not weakness, Ira. It is the privilege of the strong, to shield what the world would devour. Her anger faltered. Beneath the words was something else, something ancient and wounded. Cale looked away first. There will be others, he said. They will test you as she did. They will want to see if the Shadow Lord bleeds for you. Do not give them reason. Ira exhaled, steadying herself. And if I do? He met her gaze, the silver in his eyes flaring like lightning. Then Vareth will burn. He turned, cloak trailing behind him, and disappeared into the mist. Ira stood alone in the courtyard, the scent of iron and shadow thick in the air. For the first time, she understood the danger that came with power, hers and his. Because the whispers had been right about one thing. The night had chosen her. And the night never chose gently. The days that followed Leora's banishment passed in uneasy silence. Vareth itself seemed to brood, its endless corridors whispering softer now, its shadows heavier and stiller, as if the fortress were holding its breath. Ira felt it in the walls, in her own veins, in the way Cale's presence had grown distant, almost restrained. He avoided her at first. No lessons. No summons. Only the cold echo of his absence. It shouldn't have bothered her. She told herself that over and over. But the truth was simpler, crueler. She missed him. The steadiness in his voice. The way his eyes had once burned like stormlight when he looked at her. Even the shadows missed him. When she called them now, they came slower, sluggish, their movements uncertain, as if waiting for something she could not give. On the fourth night, she could bear it no longer. She went looking for him. Vareth's upper halls were places she had never dared to explore before. The air there was colder, thinner. Ancient murals lined the walls, depictions of battles between beings of light and darkness, angels and creatures whose faces mirrored Cale's. At the end of the highest corridor stood a great iron door, half covered in frost. It was open just a crack, faint light spilling through. Ira hesitated only once before pushing it wider. The chamber beyond was circular, vast, and filled with light that didn't come from torches. At its center, Cale knelt before a stone altar, his cloak discarded, his hands pressed against ancient runes that burned silver. The sight froze her breath. The light wasn't gentle. It was punishing. It seared against his skin like acid. Veins of black and silver raced across his arms, and blood, dark as ink, dripped from his palms. "Cale," she cried, rushing forward. He didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here." "What are you doing?" "You're remembering," he said, voice raw. "This is the price of what I am." Ira caught his shoulder, the contact burning cold against her hand. "Then stop." He turned his head slightly, eyes glowing faintly, too bright, almost feverish. "If I stop, the veil collapses." Her stomach dropped. The veil? between worlds? Yes. He drew a shuddering breath. It must be anchored. The shadow and the light war constantly. Without balance, both realms would consume each other. I was made to hold that balance. Made. He gave a small, broken laugh. Created.
Bound.
Chained, call it what you like. I am the first of the Veilborn. The last guardian between night and dawn. The words landed like blows. So all this time, she whispered, you weren't free. No, Kale said softly. But I was obedient. Until you. Ira froze. Me? You crossed the veil and lived, he said, his gaze cutting through her. Do you understand what that means? Mortals are not meant to survive this realm. Your existence defies the rules that bind me. Her heart hammered. Then why not send me back? Because I can't, he said. The moment you touched the shadows, they marked you as one of their own. You are tied to Vareth, to me, by blood and will. The veil itself recognizes you. Ira took a step back, the enormity of it crushing. You mean I'm trapped here? Kale stood slowly, his wounds already sealing, though the light still burned faintly in the runes behind him. You could call it that, he said. Or you could call it destiny. Destiny, she echoed bitterly. You think this is some gift? I was sold, Kale. My family gave me away like livestock. His expression darkened. And I took you to save you. Save me? She snapped. You've kept me in a cage made of shadows and secrets. You say I'm part of something ancient, something powerful, but you never tell me what it means. The shadows stirred, restless, responding to her anger. The light flared in answer, bright and cold. For a heartbeat, Ira thought the world might split in two. Kale's voice softened, though it trembled with restraint. It means you are more than mortal. The blood of the veil runs through you, as it does through me. You could command the balance as I do if you learn. And if I refuse? His eyes darkened. Then it will consume you. And me with it. Ira's throat tightened. You're saying if I fall, the veil falls, he finished. The silence that followed felt too heavy for air. Kale turned away, his shoulders rigid. Do you think I wanted this? To be chained to eternity? To hold the line between worlds while everything I touch fades? You think I do this because I love power? Ira swallowed hard. Then why? He faced her again, eyes silver bright, fierce. Because I love you. The world seemed to stop. Ira couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The words didn't sound like a confession. They sounded like surrender. Like truth dragged from the depths of someone who had spent centuries denying himself. You don't mean that, she whispered. He stepped closer, his voice steady now. I have walked through time and seen empires turn to dust. I have watched stars burn out. And yet none of it broke me until I saw you stand in the darkness and refuse to bow. Her chest ached. Kale, the veil responds to you because I do, he said simply. It mirrors the bond we share. Light and shadow. Balance and chaos. Before she could speak, the runes behind him flared violently. A sound like cracking thunder filled the air. The ground trembled beneath them. Kale's eyes widened. No. The altar split in two. The light bled out, twisting into shadow that surged toward the ceiling like black flame. From the fissure came a voice, deep and ancient. The balance is broken. Iris stumbled backward, the words sinking into her bones. Kale reached for her, his face pale. The veil knows, he said hoarsely. It's awakening. What does that mean? It means, he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The night no longer answers to me alone. The ground beneath Vareth trembled, as if the heart of the fortress itself had begun to beat. Shadows spilled from the broken altar in waves, and the air thickened with the metallic tang of ozone and blood. Iris stumbled, catching herself on the wall as Kale rose to his full height, his eyes blazing like silver fire. Stay back, he commanded. The darkness roared in defiance. From the wound in the stone poured shapes that barely held form, creatures built from pure shadow, faces flickering, screaming without mouths. They flooded the chamber, crawling toward the walls, the ceiling, the world beyond. Ira felt their hunger, like 1,000 teeth scraping at her mind. "Kale, what are they?" "The first shadows," he said, drawing his blade from thin air. "The ones that remember the light that birthed them." He slashed through the nearest apparition, his sword slicing cleanly through its form. The creature burst apart, dissolving into smoke. Another took its place. Ira moved to join him, but Kale's voice cracked like thunder.
No.
"I can help. You can't control it yet." She ignored him, stepping forward. The air rippled with power. She raised her hand, and the darkness hesitated, as if uncertain whether she was prey or kin. "Listen to me," she whispered, "not to Kale, but to them. You are not my enemy." The shadows writhed, their whispers becoming coherent, desperate. "You are the gate. You are the blood that binds." Kale swung again, but Ira caught his arm. "Wait." He stared at her, fury and fear colliding in his eyes. "You don't understand what they'll do to you." "Then let me understand." The shadows surged toward her, enveloping her in a whirl of cold. She gasped, feeling them claw through her, memories, fears, hopes, all ripped open at once. She saw her childhood home burning, her father turning away, her sister laughing as she was led to slaughter. But beyond it all, she saw Kale. Alone, kneeling before the altar again and again, bleeding eternity into the stone so the world would not die.
She understood then.
The shadows weren't the enemy. They were the consequence. They wanted freedom, from pain, from the endless pull of light and dark. Ira's voice trembled, but she raised it. "You don't need to devour to exist. You don't need to destroy to be seen. I see you." For a moment, the entire fortress went still. The creatures froze. Then, one by one, they began to dissolve into her, sinking into her skin like returning embers. Kale's blade dropped to his side. "Ira." When the last of the shadows vanished, she stood at the center of the ruin, her eyes glowing with twin lights, one silver, one white. "What have you done?" he breathed. "I didn't fight them," she said softly. "I listened." The air shifted. The broken altar pulsed once, then sealed itself, whole again.
But the world beyond had changed.
The veil no longer hummed in pain. It sang, low and deep, like a vast ocean settling after a storm. Kale sank to his knees, relief and exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "You balanced it." "No," she said, walking toward him, her bare feet leaving trails of light and shadow. "We did." When she reached him, he bowed his head. "You've taken the burden from me. You don't understand what that means." "I think I do." She knelt before him, reaching out to touch his cheek. "You carried it alone for centuries. It was never meant for one soul to bear." Kale caught her hand, his fingers trembling. "And now you are bound to it."
To me.
"You'll never see the sun again, Ira." She smiled faintly. "I never belonged to the light." The words struck him harder than any blade. Slowly, he drew her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "Then stay," he murmured. "Stay, and let the night know its equal." Outside, the veil pulsed once more, spreading calm across the realm. The storm stilled. The rivers of black glass shimmered with faint silver veins. Even the towers of Vareth seemed to exhale, their eternal tension easing. For the first time since time began, the night felt at peace. Ira closed her eyes, and for a heartbeat, she heard every whisper in Vareth, each one calling her name with reverence. Queen of the Veil. Balance of shadow and flame. When she opened them, Kale was watching her, not as his creation, nor as his burden, but as his equal. "I used to believe my curse was being unseen," she said. "But it wasn't. It was believing I wasn't meant to exist at all." He traced a finger along her jaw, his touch steady. "And now," she said, standing as light and shadow flared behind her, "I know I was born for this." Kale rose beside her, and for a moment, the darkness bowed to them both. Far beyond the fortress, dawn broke, not golden, but pale and silver, the first sunrise the Vale had seen in millennia. The creatures of the shadow watched from afar, silent and awed, as their lord and lady stood united at the heart of night. And though the world above would never know their names, it would remember their peace. For where light and darkness met, love was born, and it would never die again. In the centuries that followed, they said the Vale no longer devoured. It whispered, it healed, and sometimes, when the night was quiet and the moon burned silver, mortals swore they heard two voices entwined within the wind, one of shadow, one of flame, guarding the balance forever. In the end, light and shadow didn't destroy each other. They became one, bound by love, born of pain, and reborn through choice. Ira and Kale's story reminds us, even the darkest hearts can find their light, and even the brightest souls carry shadows worth loving. If this tale pulled you into its world, if you felt the ache, the fire, the beauty of what it means to belong, then don't let it end here. Subscribe for more dark fantasy love stories, worlds of forbidden power, fragile hope, and hearts that burn against destiny. Hit the bell so you never miss the next story waiting in the shadows. Until then, let the night remember your name.